Thank you to President Zelensky for his remarks. We were hoping for this session to have with us Andrei Yermak, who's the head of the Office of the President of Ukraine. He's in transit, I think maybe on a helicopter right now. We're hoping he'll be able to join us. When he does, he'll be able to chime into this conversation. But it's my privilege now to talk to Anders. Anders, you've proposed something called the Kyiv Security Compact. What exactly is this?
The Kyiv Security Compact is a set of proposals as to how we can guarantee Ukraine's security in the future to avoid a new Russian invasion. There are four main elements in the Kyiv Security Compact. Firstly, we need to help the Ukrainians build and develop such a strong military that they can withstand all Russian attacks in the future, living up to NATO standards, a strong military. That's the first point. Secondly, we should enhance the exchange of intelligence between Ukraine and its allies. Thirdly, we should sustain joint training and exercises under EU flag and NATO flag, also on Ukrainian soil. And fourth, we should help the Ukrainians develop a strong defense industry so that Ukraine is capable of producing weapons and ammunition itself. Those 4 points will make Ukraine capable of defending itself by itself. And the idea is that a group of international guarantor states pledge to help Ukraine develop those capabilities, led by the US, but joined by the UK, Germany, France, Poland, you mentioned it.
What's the timeline for this in your vision?
Actually, it is a continuation of what we're already doing. So I would think rather today than tomorrow. And I hope an agreement could be reached between Ukraine and a number of countries in the run-up to the Vilnius summit in July this year on how these security guarantees could be detailed. So I would say the next couple of months will be decisive because Ukraine will need those security guarantees until Ukraine can join NATO down the road.
What kind of reaction have you gotten to this proposal thus far?
Well, I have traveled a lot, several times to the US. I visited Berlin, I visited Brussels. In principle, people are in favor of those security guarantees, but we still need firm commitments. The Prime Minister of the UK, Sunak, he stated a couple of months ago that the UK would work in the direction of those security assurances, he called it, in the run-up to the Vilnius summit. So still, I'm hopeful that we can get signatures from a number of countries. But obviously, the US will be a decisive factor.
What kind of money are we talking about? What kind of an investment are you looking for these guarantors to make?
Yeah, we're speaking about billions of dollars or euros, but we're already doing that. I mean, this is a codification of what we're already doing.
But extending the timeline for a very long period.
Yes, but we are already stating that we are in this for as long as it takes. And this would send a very strong message to Putin that, Putin, forget it, you will never ever win this war because we have guaranteed the security of Ukraine for as long as it takes. So forget it. Ultimately, the only security guarantee, I would say the ultimate security guarantee would be for Ukraine to join NATO and be covered by Article 5. And I'm clearly in favor of Ukraine joining NATO. But we also know there is a time frame where this will not happen, and in the meantime, Ukraine needs those security guarantees.
So this is an interim measure, sort of a holding pattern, as it were, until the day perhaps when Ukraine can join NATO.
Yes, it won't prevent future NATO membership for Ukraine. On the contrary, it will be a stepping stone. And we are already now helping Ukraine building the strong military, and we are sending weapons, and we should send more weapons, long-range missiles, heavy battle tanks, even fighter jets. So we should continue on that path. We are already exchanging intelligence between Ukraine and its allies. We are already doing joint training exercises, not on Ukrainian soil, but on NATO soil. While we are, of course, not building a defense industry in Ukraine yet. That has to await a more peaceful situation. But all in all, security guarantees is a continuation of what we're already doing.
I want to go back to the money question for just a moment, because as I understand it, only 7 NATO countries are currently spending the 2% of GDP on their militaries that are recommended. So how willing are countries going to be to commit to this huge expenditure of resources for Ukraine?
That's the key question, and that's why there has been some reluctance so far. But yesterday, for instance, the German government pledged a new huge delivery.
3 billion. 3 billion.
Yes. And we have seen a development where countries have been reluctant at the beginning of the process, but eventually they have accepted to send heavy battle tanks, to send more ammunition, etc. So you might meet some skepticism at the beginning, but I'm confident that soon countries will realize that we need to give Ukraine something in exchange for the courage in their fight against the Russians. And that something would be security guarantees.
So each of these guarantors has their own domestic political situation that they're dealing with. And polling has shown that in some parts of the world, notably the US and Europe, support for Ukraine's cause has been softening just a little bit. Does this concern you as you look to try and get these massive commitments of dollars?
It is a matter of concern, obviously, and an argument why we should put a quick end to this conflict. And the way we can put a quick end to the conflict is to deliver all the weapons the Ukrainians need. As I said, longer range missiles, heavy battle tanks, fighter jets. The Ukrainians have the will to fight. It's our duty to give them the means to fight. And that is a winning formula.
Another part of this that you mentioned was intelligence sharing. In the US, we've had a massive leak of intelligence, the so-called Discord leak. And from what one reads, President Zelensky has become a little more wary of sharing intelligence with the West because he's afraid it's going to leak out. Is this an obstacle?
It's not an obstacle, but obviously it is a disturbing fact. And I wouldn't exclude the possibility that this leak has also changed the Ukrainian plans on a counteroffensive. So obviously those leaks do have a negative impact on the way the Ukrainians conduct their warfare. But I'm confident that the US will take care of this and prevent such leaks in the future.
We'll see. They didn't expect this one on a gaming platform, I will say that. Is there something comparable already in place? I have read references to the U.S. Guarantees that it gives Israel for its security. Is that very much like what we're talking about here with Kyiv?
Yes, it is. Obviously, there are differences between Ukraine and Israel, but basically we have modeled the Kyiv Security Pact over the security arrangement between the US and Israel. And on the 14th of July last year, President Biden visited Israel and the US issued a joint statement according to which the US is prepared to do everything it can to help Israel to improve its capability to defend itself by itself. Actually, you will see word by word quotations in the Kyiv Security Compact taken from this joint Israeli-US statement. No one foresees the deployment of American troops on Israeli soil, but the US Congress has pledged to do everything to help Israel withstand any attack from its neighbors.
You mentioned that NATO is meeting in Vilnius in July. Specifically, what do you want to see NATO do at that meeting as regards the Kyiv Security Compact?
Well, I think we should strive for three important decisions at the Vilnius summit. First, we should not just repeat the language we decided already back in 2008, that Ukraine will become a member of NATO. We decided that back in 2008. It isn't sufficient just to repeat that. We should do something more. And I think NATO should decide to say, okay, we outline a roadmap towards Ukrainian membership of NATO. Step 2, in the run-up to the NATO summit in Vilnius, some countries led by the US should sign a document giving security guarantees to Ukraine until Ukraine can join NATO. And third, next year, NATO will celebrate its 75th anniversary and will do that in a new summit in Washington. And I think that summit in Washington would be an excellent opportunity to invite Ukraine to join NATO. Then, of course, we will need some time to figure out exactly how could Article 5 cover a country that is maybe still at war. It will take some time, and in the meantime, we need security guarantees for Ukraine.
How do you think Russia's going to react to this?
I don't care. It's dangerous if we give in to threats from Putin. Those who give in to nuclear threats are condemned to live in slavery under whip of the nuclear master. So, of course, you can always get peace if you are willing to bow your neck to the nuclear master. But I do not want to live in peace without freedom. I want freedom, and I'm prepared to fight for freedom. And this is the reason why we should never, ever care about Russian concerns.
Does this security compact deal at all with the possibility of reintroducing nuclear weapons to Ukraine?
No, Ukraine has given up nuclear weapons, has signed the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty and did so already back in 1994. In exchange for that, and actually Ukraine had inherited nuclear weapons from the Soviet Union, they gave up the nuclear weapons and handed them over to Russia. And in exchange, Ukraine received so-called security guarantees from Russia in the Budapest Memorandum, the document is called, in which Russia refrained from using force against Ukraine, and Russia recognized the international borders of Ukraine, including Crimea, just to see the whole thing violated 20 years later. So
they violated it on their side. Why shouldn't nuclear weapons be reintroduced on the Ukrainian side?
No, because we are all in favor of non-proliferation of nuclear weapons. And I think the Russian military knows very well that if Putin orders the military to use nuclear weapons, there would be no strategic advantage by that, because it has already been given a very clear message to Russia that the response from the US would be determined and very strong. So even in the case that we do not use nuclear weapons, but only conventional weapons, it will have a devastating effect on the Russian military. For that reason, the Russian military would refuse to abide by such orders from Putin, and their only alternative would be to remove Putin. And I see that as one of the options for removal of Putin. If he tries to use nuclear weapons, I think it would be the end of the Putin era.
So you said a couple of times that what you're asking for is essentially a continuation of what's being done already by the West to support Ukraine. So just to sum up here, tell us why it's so important, in your view, to formalize this in this security compact.
The security compact is important to, so to speak, fix the Russia problem. We need a strong and stable Ukraine as a bulwark against an aggressive Russia to ensure more permanent peace and stability on the European continent. And by that, we will free up resources to address the real long-term global channels, namely China. So that's why we need the Kyiv Security Compact to create a new European security architecture.
Anders Fogh Rasmussen, thanks so much for your insights on this today. I appreciate it. And now I'm going to ask Jamil to return to the stage for the next segment.